Hey there, and welcome back to By His Grace Marriage Ministry Podcast. My name is Amanda. Today's episode is not one of the Fruits of the Spirit episodes. I am doing an episode that is completely off that topic. This is one of those spontaneous episodes, one of those I've got to share it, I've got to get the word out there. That's what this episode is. And actually, this is a question that was asked to me, and it is something I have talked about within my podcast, within my ministry, and it has to do with prodigals and counterfeits. Now, I have talked more on counterfeits than I have prodigals, so that's something I'm going to focus on. But I did have this question asked to me, and I felt it very important to come on and share this. I actually, before I started the Fruits of the Spirit series, I was going to do an episode about prodigals, and I can't remember why. I recorded the whole episode and I ended up removing it, and I ended up going into the series. So I guess it's time to just share about this because it really is an important word. I'm going to try not to make it too long. I actually only have 30 minutes, so I better get started. Okay, prodigals and counterfeits. All right. I had somebody ask me, what is a prodigal? What is the outcome of that? How does it connect with counterfeits? So I'm going to answer those questions and do my best to explain this. I'm also going to share some examples from my own personal life and how it affected my life, my spouse's life, and why it caused so much of a delay, and why it causes so much of a delay for many others who are destined and called to come into a godly marriage, but either still haven't, or it was delayed and it took a long time, or what seemed like was a long time. Okay, so a prodigal, for those of you who have not read this story or this parable, I want you to read the parable of the prodigal son. For the sake of time, I'm not going to read it again because I have a limit of 30 minutes for today. So I'm not going to read it. But when you have time, please read the parable of the prodigal son so you can get a better idea, or just more of an idea of what a prodigal means. Okay? And I will just quickly kind of sum it up. A son decided he wanted to leave home. He demanded his inheritance from his father. The father gave him the inheritance. The son went. He went out into the world. He basically splurged his inheritance on whatever he wanted. I would imagine it wasn't good things. It wasn't things that were acceptable in the eyes of Elohim. And before he knew it, his inheritance ran out. He had nowhere to live. He was going hungry. He had absolutely nothing. He got so hungry and so to the point of just having absolutely nothing that he was working for a man and caring for pigs, I believe. And he wanted to actually eat what the pigs were eating. That's how hungry he was and how bad he had gotten. And that was when he realized that he had made a mistake and that he longed to go back home, to return home. He was, I think, a little bit afraid to return home. But he did. And his father accepted him with open arms. Okay? His father accepted him with open arms. He didn't turn away. He didn't say, you made this mistake. Now you're going to have to, live it out, His father accepted him. So the parable is to let us know that that is how Elohim is with us, that no matter what mistakes we make, as long as we repent, he will always welcome us with open arms. Now, a prodigal in terms of relational, right? Like in terms of relationships in our marriages, this can have a huge impact. And this is what ultimately can cause delays right along with counterfeits, okay? So real quick, I will give you an example from my own life, okay? So growing up, and for those of you who listen to my testimony, you know this already, I did not grow up in a home that believed, or they did believe, but my parents didn't implement it into our childhood. Okay, so I didn't go to church. I didn't know what the Bible was. I didn't know about any of the stories in the Bible. I didn't know who God was. I didn't know who Jesus was. I didn't know any of that. Okay, had no clue. And didn't until I was an adult, well into my 20s, mid to late 20s is when I gave my life and my heart to Elohim. Okay, so that's not a prodigal because I never knew who Elohim was. I didn't know what the Bible was. I didn't know what scripture was. I didn't know what going to church was. Nobody ever explained it to me. Nobody taught me. Nobody, preached to me the good news. Nobody did any of that. Okay, that's not a prodigal. Okay, what is a prodigal is if you grew up in a Christian household or whatever, you grew up believing, you went to church, you know what's in the Bible more or less, you have an idea, you know who God is, you know who Jesus is, you know what God did, by sending his son, you know these things. But as you got older, you decided to turn away. You decided to do your own thing. You decided to make your own choices. You decided to take your own path. Okay, free will. All right, that's a prodigal because now you've left that path. Okay, so for example, I have a few family members that are prodigals because they grew up in a Christian home, right? They grew up believing, they grew up going to church, they grew up knowing scriptures, knowing the stories. And when they got older, they left it. Okay? They left it, which what ended up being the result of that was someone like me not knowing for my whole childhood into my adulthood, not knowing anything. Okay? So that's the result of that. But that is what a prodigal is when they know who Elohim is. They know who Yeshua is. They know the stories. They know the scriptures. They've gone to church. They know what it's like, but they choose to leave it. Okay. Now, how does prodigal and counterfeits connect? This is how they connect. Okay. When you're a prodigal and you've gone off on your own, you've gone off into the world, you're in your own free will, you're making your own choices, your own decisions. This is where these two connect. Okay. Because now the enemy sees you've left. Okay. You've left God completely or halfway or however you want to look at it. The thing is, when you do that, it's just enough to give legal right and an opening to the enemy to come into your life to try to destroy it. Okay? He can't take your life, but he can cause it to be damaged and destroyed. And often, the way that he does it will be through our own hands. Okay? It will often be through our own hands. What does that mean? It means when we make our own decisions. And because we've left God, because we've left Elohim, we're not seeking him in prayer and saying, is this what you want me to do? Is this the job you want me to take? Is this the person I'm supposed to be with that you've called? Right? Is this the ministry I'm supposed to be a part of? Am I supposed to be doing this right now? So when you're a prodigal, or even when you're someone like me that for the longest time I had no clue about anything, the enemy has access and free reign to these people. Okay? And so a lot of times what the enemy does, and I've talked about this in my episode that was mainly for men, where I talked about the dangers of counterfeit relationships and lifestyles, okay? What the enemy will do is he will bring things into your life, okay, to cause delay or to just destroy your life completely, okay? Now, how does that connect to relationships and to marriages? Easy, okay? He puts somebody in your path, and because you're in your free will, because you're making your own choices, because you think you know what's best, you decide to get together with this person. You find this person attractive, you like them, they like you, everything seems wonderful. And even if you're wondering in the back of your mind, am I doing the right thing, Elohim's not going to tell you because you've disconnected yourself from him. So he's letting you do what you want to do. Because remember what I said, Elohim is love. So he's not going to force anybody to do the will that he has for that individual. He's not. Because if he did that, then it's not love. That's why there's free will. Okay? So you move forward in this relationship. You decide to marry this person. Or maybe you don't even marry them. Maybe you just You begin to fornicate with this person. Now you've had a child. Now you've had a few children. Now all of a sudden you have this whole life that was never meant for you to have. It's a counterfeit lifestyle. It's a counterfeit relationship, a counterfeit marriage, and yes, I'm going to even say a counterfeit family. Now, again, I'm going to make this very clear. All children to me are blessings from Him. And Abba will accommodate the situation and bless these children, okay? Read the story of Abraham with Ishmael and Isaac. They may not be a part of the plan, but they are still a blessing, and Elohim will bless them. But the thing is, because you've now created this counterfeit lifestyle, okay, you've now delayed the life that Elohim wants to give you. And what this does is this creates this domino effect, okay? Because this doesn't just affect you, okay? It affects the people that are counterfeit in your life. It affects the people that Elohim has for you to come into your life, okay? So when you do stuff like this, you're affecting everybody connected to you and everybody that hasn't even connected to you yet, the people that will eventually come into your life. You've now caused this delay. So for example, okay, say there's a man by the name, we'll call him John, okay? And there's a woman by the name of let's just call her Sally, okay? Sally and John are to marry. That is Elohim's will for John and Sally. They're to marry at whatever time that Elohim says. And, they're going to do ministry together. They're going to have a family and whatever other details and plans that, Abba has for them, okay? But let's say John is a prodigal. He decides at the age of 24 that he's going to completely just disconnect himself from Elohim. He's not going to go to church anymore. He's not going to pray anymore. He doesn't want to wait anymore. He decides, like the prodigal son, he's going to do him. He's going to go and do him when he wants, when he says, and nobody's going to stop him. Okay? Let's just say that, all right? And while John goes out into the world and completely gets off the path of Elohim, he meets a woman. And let's just say this woman's name is, I'm going blank on names here. Let's just say her name is Amber. Okay, that's the name that came to my head. Okay, John meets Amber. Okay, Amber is a nice enough gal, right? But she is not the wife that Elohim has for John. The wife that Elohim has for John is the lady I mentioned first, Sally. Okay? But again, because John is a prodigal, he's in this prodigal state of mind, he's left Elohim, and Elohim's not going to force John and say, nope, he might throw him some clues and some flags, but John ignores it. Okay, because again, Elohim is not going to force himself on anybody. Even though it pains him to see what we do to ourselves and to others, okay, and he does try to throw hints and clues without being forceful, but oftentimes we ignore those signs, okay, because we're stubborn or because we're selfish or because, we're just in that prodigal state of mind, okay? So John now feels he's in love, he's attracted to Amber, and he's just like, this is what I want. He doesn't pray and ask Abba. He doesn't say, is this for me? Is this the right decision? Nope. He's just like, nope, this is what I want. She's pretty, I like her, she gets me, this and that and the next thing. Because remember, when the enemy throws counterfeits, so see, now the enemy's thrown this counterfeit Amber in John's life because John is now a prodigal. He's left the path of God. Okay? And the thing is, when the enemy throws counterfeits, he makes it look like it's the best thing ever. That it is right for you, okay? So John moves forward. John decides, I'm going to take it slow, but I'm going to go ahead and fornicate because this is what I want to do. And so now he's fornicating with this counterfeit woman. He thinks he's in love with her. He probably is in love with her, right? Maybe they decide to get married. Maybe they don't. So whether they got married and had kids, whether they had kids, never got married, when they cohabit together, whatever the outcome is, the thing is, it's counterfeit. It's not from Elohim. So now what has happened is John has created this counterfeit lifestyle, okay? And now what that's done is for Sally, who is the wife that Elohim called John to be with, is now over in her life delayed, okay? She's sitting there praying, wondering, God, where is my husband? I know everything is in your timing and, this and that, but, where is my husband? Where's this marriage that you've shown me or you've told me about? All of a sudden 2 years has gone by and 5 years have gone by, 10 years has gone by. And Sally's still sitting there being obedient. She's not dating. She's not just getting with any guy because now she's getting impatient. She's done waiting. She's sitting there obedient, waiting for her husband that Yah has ordained. And her husband is over there playing house with somebody else. He's created a whole counterfeit lifestyle. This is the problem. And the only way that Abba can fix it is John has to realize this isn't for me, okay? And oftentimes what will happen is Elohim will not bless that life that John has created. He won't bless the job if it's a counterfeit. He won't bless the marriage or the relationship if it's counterfeit. It's all going to fall apart, okay? So let's say that all of a sudden 5 years goes by, okay? John and Amber are fighting constantly. It's toxic, okay? Things aren't working out, okay? They never did work out, all right? Things wore off after the first year or so. Things don't work out. Now let's just say John and Amber had a few kids, okay? Now there's custody issues as well. Now there's financial issues. John feels trapped, okay? John feels trapped, and maybe this woman is now manipulating him. Maybe she's controlling him. Maybe she's using the children as pawns and saying, hey, you're not going anywhere, or hey, you've got to do this or that or the next thing. And now John has dug himself in this hole. And here's the thing. I've seen a lot of people in this situation where they cry out finally to Elohim, because remember, John is a believer, but John left his relationship with Elohim. And now all of a sudden, because he's going through all of this turmoil, right? Now he's crying out to Elohim. Why is this happening to me? Why is my life so bad? Why is everything I do or everything that I thought was for me is falling apart? Here's why, John, because none of it was from Yah. None of it was from Elohim. And he is not obligated to bless it because it's not for you and it's not good for you. Now, because there's children now, of course, those children still need to be taken care of, okay? And if you're in that situation, yes, you still take care of your kids. It doesn't mean you have to stay with the person you had those children with, though, okay? Because that's only going to make things worse. It's hard for the children. It's sad for them, yes. And too many children go through that. But it's better that way than staying together and causing more grief, especially if there's a lot of toxicity in that relationship or abuse of any kind. It's not good for the kids to be around, okay? So now John is crying out. John realizes he's made mistakes, okay? This is where John would need to repent so that now Elohim can get that green light and start removing these things. This is where relationships break down. This is where marriages dissolve in divorce, okay? Here's the thing. I've had people tell me, oh, that's not right because Elohim keeps covenants. He's a covenant-keeping God. Yes, he is, but in covenants that are from him, that he has called, that he has ordained. So you're telling me that if somebody puts themselves in a covenant with some kind of cult, whether it's satanic or whatever, or claiming to be godly but they're not, you're telling me that Elohim's now going to honor that, so he's not going to save you from that? You know what I mean? I mean, that's not the kind of Elohim that we serve, okay? When you make covenants, when you make these things, what that does is it gives the enemy, it gives Satan the right to come into your life and destroy it. That's what that does, okay? Elohim is over here saying, I don't want this for you, and I never had this for you. I want to save you from this, but I can't save you until you ask me. If you want to keep living in sin, if you want to keep living in this counterfeit lifestyle, that's up to you. I want to save you, but you've got to let me know you want to be saved. You know, and it's really sad, because this is why there's delays. Because remember, your choices, your decisions, your actions, they don't just affect you. They affect everybody around you, everybody connected to you, and even those that aren't even in your life yet. Your future spouse, your future children that are going to be born to you and your spouse. The ministry the two of you are going to birth together. The assignments that the two of you are going to do. All of those things get delayed because of the choices you made that were not in alignment with Yah's will for your life. This is how prodigals and counterfeits connect. A prodigal lifestyle creates counterfeits. And likewise, counterfeits create prodigals. They intertwine together, they go hand in hand. So if you are someone that has been fortunate enough to be taught the Word of God, to have gone to church, even though we've got to be careful when it comes to churches, but the thing is, if you have been blessed enough to have knowledge of who Elohim is and His Word, then please follow that, because it is the best thing that you can ever do for you and everybody connected to you, now and later. Not to mention your salvation and being able to be with Elohim eternally. Yeshua died for our sins so that we could have, so that we could be with Elohim eternally, And yet so many of us are taking that for granted, and we're still just saying, well, I'm going to go do what I want to do anyways because I'm tired of waiting, or I don't know what's going to happen, so I'd rather be in control than this and that. We're making these decisions out of selfishness, out of fear, out of stubbornness, pride being one of the main ones. And for some, there are some that just simply don't know. Like me, I simply just didn't know. But anything I did after the age of 26 up until today, I had no excuse. Because now I know Elohim, I know His Word. But anything before the age of 26, I had no clue. Because it was just never told to me. I wasn't taught, But after that, I had no excuse. And praise Yah, I've never been a prodigal. I've never just left the path that I'm on with Him. I've had some moments of weariness, but I've never left it. But the ones that do, that's where most of the time those counterfeit lifestyles come in. And when we don't know God, when we don't know His Word, that's where counterfeits come in. Because the enemy's like, ooh, this person has no clue, so I'm going to go ahead and fool them and just bring all the stuff in their life and destroy their life over time or immediately. Prodigals, those that decide to leave the path that they're on with Elohim, even more, the enemy's like, perfect. This was somebody that was with Elohim, now he doesn't want to be anymore? Even better. Not only does it hurt Elohim, not only does it grieve Him, but we are also hurting the people around us, the people connected to us, and the people that will be connected to us. Think about all the things that could have been avoided had you not made certain decisions. I know of several people, myself included, that look back on their life. They look back into their past and say, boy, if I would have just prayed about it, if I would have waited, if I would have been patient or whatever, that wouldn't have happened. If I wouldn't have, committed that sin, I wouldn't have, give access to Satan to come in and wreak havoc on my life. If I would have said no to that temptation, I wouldn't be dealing with what I am now. You know what's sad, brothers and sisters, is that there are a lot of people, and this goes to both brother and sister. I've seen it. Okay? It happened to me. You fall into temptation with someone that you have no business being with, and because of one time, or because of months of being on and off with this person, even though you know something just doesn't feel right, you end up putting yourself in a bondage, in a stronghold that ends up being absolute hell in your life. And some of it is consequences that will never go away. For example, again, if you fell into temptation with someone and now you're having a child by this person, there you go. Again, children are a blessing, but now you've just put yourself in a huge bondage that is now going to affect your life for the rest of your life. Now, again, Elohim can rescue you out of that, and you can still be on that path and what he has for you, but now you have these children or that child, okay? And again, Abba will accommodate that, okay? Now, the other issue with that, and let me see if I still have it in my phone. Yes, I do. So I actually just shared this in my last episode, but I'm going to share it again because it goes right along with what I'm talking about. The other issue when you go into a counterfeit relationship, when you fornicate, and again, fornication means you're having sex with anybody that is not your spouse in Yah's eyes, okay? Adultery is when you are in a relationship or marriage and you're with that person and somebody else, okay? You're being unfaithful. That's adultery. There's a difference. People think adultery and fornication are the same thing. They're not exactly the same thing. They have two different meanings, okay? Now, when you are fornicating, when you are in a counterfeit relationship that was never meant for you, what you're doing is you're creating an ungodly soul tie. This is why I laugh when people say, oh, the first person you ever slept with, that's your spouse. And that's your spouse to Elohim. No, it is not. What you've done is you've created an ungodly soul tie, okay? And I better hurry because I've got just a few minutes left. Okay, if you've ever felt controlled, manipulated, or dominated, or even blackmailed and frustrated by memories or are still going through it in your relationship, you're dealing with an ungodly soul tie. Ungodly soul ties are counterfeit to Elohim's plan for your life and instead is enforced by Satan and demons, meant to enslave you, in other words, put you in bondage. And this is what I see many brothers and sisters, more so men, going through right now. And this is what's delaying a lot of marriages. There's a lot of singles saying, why am I still not married? What is taking so long? More than likely, your future spouse is bound because they've created an ungodly soul tie. They've created a counterfeit lifestyle. They now have a family that they were never supposed to have. They were supposed to have a family with you, like the John situation. John ended up creating a life and family with Amber when he was supposed to create a life and family with Sally. Okay? That's why there's so many delays. That's why so many lives are being destroyed and damaged. And it's either because the person is a prodigal, okay? The person fell in a counterfeit relationship, lifestyle, through either being a prodigal or just simply being stubborn and wanting to do things their way. So that's how those two connect. That's what a prodigal is, okay? That is all I'm going to say because I have ran out of time. Again, totally sporadic, totally spontaneous, but I felt this was an important word to share. And I've had people ask me. I've talked about it before, not so much on prodigals, and I will do a separate episode going into more detail about prodigals and how you can pray. If your spouse is a prodigal, then I'm going to actually do an episode. You'll want to stay tuned because I'm going to do an episode about how to pray if your spouse is a prodigal, okay? How to break them out of the bondage and stronghold that they're in. And more than likely, if this is your case, Elohim has already revealed this to you, and this is part of your assignment, is to pray over your spouse who is a prodigal. Okay? So that is it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk with you in my next episodes.